Let's be real. People lie more than you think. And the hardest lies to detect aren't from strangers. They're from the people closest to you, your friend, your partner, even someone in your family. We like to believe we're good at spotting deception, but often we're not blind. We're just choosing not to see. I've been there. I used to think I had a sharp sense for character, like I could read people easily. But then someone I trusted deeply, someone I considered solid, lied to my face for months. The signs were all there. Small changes in their tone, explanations that went just a little too far. Moments of defensiveness that didn't fit the conversation. But I didn't want to believe it, so I ignored the signs, because the pain of mistrust felt heavier than the comfort of denial. Let me tell you a short story. There was a man who found a crack in the wall of his home. It was small, barely visible. Instead of investigating, he painted over it. Weeks later, the crack widened. Still, he ignored it. Eventually, the entire wall collapsed because the crack wasn't cosmetic, it was structural. That's what it's like with lies. We see the cracks, we feel something's off, but we paint over it with hope, loyalty, and excuses until the truth comes crashing down. Here's the truth. People lie, more than we want to admit. And the more personal the relationship, the harder it is to face the possibility. But facing it is power. Accepting that people are capable of deception, yes, even the ones you love, isn't weakness. It's wisdom. It doesn't make you paranoid. It makes you awake. So if you're ready to strip away the illusions and see things for what they are, not what you wish they were, then keep reading. Because what comes next are undeniable signs that someone is lying to you. And yes, they might hit closer to home than you expect. But it's better to be hurt by the truth than comforted by a lie. 2. Take a deep breath. Open your eyes. Let's stop painting over the cracks and start seeing clearly. Number 1. They're always changing the subject. Have you ever tried to have a real conversation with someone only to feel like you're chasing a moving target? You bring up something meaningful, something that really matters to you, and in a flash, they've switched topics like it never happened. One minute you're asking a serious question, the next they're talking about lunch, memes, or something random on their phone. It's like playing a game of verbal dodgeball. Every time you throw something real their way, they sidestep it with impressive speed. Let me share something personal. I was once in a relationship where this happened all the time, and for a while I didn't even register it. Whenever I tried to talk about where we were headed, what the future looked like, how we deal with challenges, or even just clarifying feelings, they'd suddenly pivot to something totally unrelated. Let's not talk about that right now. What do you want for dinner? Or, did you see that post on Instagram? It seemed harmless. I brushed it off, telling myself maybe they were just tired, distracted, or not ready for that depth of conversation. But over time, I began to see the pattern. The truth wasn't that they weren't ready for the conversation. It was that they were avoiding it entirely. And that's a much bigger issue. When someone constantly shifts the topic, it's not just forgetfulness or a quirky habit. More often than not, it's a form of emotional evasion. It's about dodging responsibility, sidestepping commitment, and staying in a safe space where nothing hard has to be faced. Here's the uncomfortable truth. People avoid real conversations because truth is heavy, and facing it takes courage. Many would rather preserve their comfort than risk confrontation, even if that means staying silent about something that matters. And too often we let them. Why? Because we don't want to be that person. We don't want to push too hard or be accused of creating drama. So we stay quiet. We let the moment pass. And in doing so, we enable dishonesty, not through words, but through silence. That's the part people overlook. Not all lies are spoken. Some are just cleverly avoided. A shift in conversation, a change in tone, a quick distraction. These subtle detours can be just as dishonest as an outright lie. Over time, those small acts of avoidance chip away at trust. Not all at once, but slowly, quietly, piece by piece. I learned this lesson the hard way. Every time I let them redirect the conversation, I was silently giving permission for the truth to be hidden. I wasn't just avoiding a fight, I was avoiding reality. And in the process, I allowed the foundation of our connection to weaken. Here's what I've come to understand. When someone changes the subject the moment things get real, it's not a harmless habit. It's a red flag. It shows that they're prioritizing their own emotional comfort over your need for clarity. That's not love. That's not respect. That's self-preservation at the expense of real connection. So what do you do about it? You don't need to start a fight. You don't need to accuse or attack. But you do need to hold your ground. Stay with the truth. Bring the conversation back. Say, "This matters to me," and mean it. Because anyone who truly values you won't run from uncomfortable conversations. They'll face them with you. In the end, it's not about confrontation. It's about integrity. Because while lies can be spoken, they can also be silently permitted. And if you want a relationship built on truth, you have to stop letting the hard topics disappear. Real love, real friendship, and real respect begin with honesty, even when it's uncomfortable. Number 2, listen to understand, not just to reply. Listening, truly listening, is one of the most powerful tools you can use to build connection. But it's also one of the most misunderstood. In a world where everyone wants to be heard, too few people are willing to do the hearing. Most of us don't actually listen to understand. We listen so we can respond. We wait for a pause, not to absorb, but to insert our opinion. And whether we realize it or not, that kind of listening isn't connection, it's competition. Let's be honest, we've all been there, sitting across from someone, nodding, smiling, pretending to be present, while in our heads we're rehearsing the perfect comeback or story to one-up what they just said. I've done it many times. And each time I walked away thinking I had a great conversation, but the truth? I wasn't really present. I was just waiting for my turn to speak. That's not connection. That's self-centeredness dressed up as dialogue. And here's what most people don't tell you. People can feel it. They know when your ears are open, but your mind is elsewhere. They can sense when they're not being heard, when your attention is divided, or worse, when your focus is on outshining them instead of understanding them. That's the fastest way to make someone feel unseen, dismissed, or even used. Now contrast that with listening with intention. Listening not to reply, but to really get it, to step into someone else's perspective without the urge to fix, advise, or judge. That's where the real magic happens. I remember one specific conversation with a colleague who was clearly going through something heavy. My instincts were screaming, offer advice, fix the issue, say something wise. But for once I resisted. I said nothing. I just listened. Not with solutions, just with attention. I gave them the space to talk without interruption or analysis. And something shifted. Their guard dropped. They spoke freely, with depth and trust. At the end, they said something I'll never forget. I've never felt so heard. That one moment taught me more than any book or motivational quote ever could. It taught me that people don't always want answers. They want acknowledgement. They want their pain, their joy, their fears, whatever they're carrying to be met with presence, not performance. And that's the deeper truth. In a noisy world full of opinions, distractions, and superficial exchanges, genuine listening is rare. It's not about being passive, it's about being present. It's not about silence, it's about stillness. And when you offer that kind of space to someone, you're telling them you matter. That's real charm. That's real connection. Not witty comebacks, not polished responses, but presence, attention, care. So how do you become a better listener? First, pause your inner dialogue. When someone is talking, don't focus on what you'll say next. Focus on what they're saying now. Second, reflect what you hear, not with robotic summaries, but with genuine reactions. That sounds hard, or tell me more about that. Show them you're walking through their story with them, not just waiting at the finish line with advice. Third, get comfortable with silence. You don't have to fill every pause. Sometimes the best moments in a conversation happen in the quiet. In the end, people don't remember every word you say, but they will always remember how you made them feel. And nothing makes someone feel more seen, more valued, or more human than the simple act of being deeply heard. So the next time you're in a conversation, don't just listen with your ears, Listen with your whole self. Listen to understand, because that's how trust is built. That's how relationships grow. And that's how you stand out, not by speaking more, but by caring enough to hear what others rarely take the time to understand. Number 3, defensive without cause. Ever asked someone a harmless question and been met with a full-blown meltdown? You say something simple like, "Hey, did you take the last slice of pizza?" And suddenly they're acting like you accuse them of grand theft. The tone shifts. Their body stiffens. They go on a tirade about how they would never do such a thing and how offended they are that you would even bring it up. That right there is defensiveness without cause, and it's a huge red flag. Let me take you into a real-life situation. I was once part of a group project. Everyone had their role, and naturally I'd check in from time to time to make sure we were all on track. Nothing aggressive, just things like, "How's your section coming along?" But one guy always reacted like I had just called him lazy to his face. He'd say things like, "Why are you always questioning me? I've been working nonstop. I don't need to be micromanaged." This, of course, came from the same person who spent half our meetings scrolling through Instagram or disappearing for long stretches. Eventually, the truth surfaced. He had barely done any of his part, and his defensiveness had just been a smokescreen. That's the pattern. When someone gets abnormally defensive over a basic or even friendly inquiry, there's usually something beneath the surface. It's not about the question, it's about what the question threatens to expose. Here's the controversial truth. People who overreact to small things often have big things to hide. It's like the saying, "A hit dog will holler." When someone explodes over a minor comment, it's usually not because they're innocent. It's because they feel cornered, even if you haven't directly accused them of anything. Think about it. When someone has nothing to hide, they don't panic when questioned. They answer plainly, they stay calm. They don't need to put on a show. But when someone's guilty or even just insecure, they treat simple curiosity like interrogation. Why? Because they're guarding a truth they hope you won't dig into. Imagine their reaction like a house with all the doors locked from the inside. You gently knock, and they shout from behind the door, "Why are you trying to break in?" All while pretending nothing's wrong. Meanwhile, you're holding a key, and they're praying you never use it. And here's where many of us go wrong. We feel bad for making someone uncomfortable. We back off. We let it slide because we don't want to seem confrontational or rude. But in doing so, we allow the lie to live. We let avoidance replace accountability. We reward emotional outbursts with silence. Defensiveness without cause isn't just a personality quirk. It's a tactic. It's used to guilt trip you into backing off, to make you question your instincts, to put you on trial for asking a question you had every right to ask. The deeper message here is simple but powerful. When someone reacts with excessive emotion to a question that didn't deserve it, pay attention. That's their guilt talking, not your rudeness. So what should you do when this happens? First, don't immediately backpedal. Stay calm. Don't let their reaction intimidate you into silence. Second, observe the pattern. One defensive moment might be a bad day, but repeated ones? That's a defense mechanism. Third, keep asking the right questions. You're not being aggressive. You're protecting your peace. At the end of the day, you deserve honesty, you deserve clarity, and no one should make you feel bad for wanting transparency. So the next time someone overreacts to something small, don't ignore it. Dig deeper, because behind the smoke of defensiveness, there's often a truth worth uncovering. Number 4, when the details are too perfect. Have you ever listened to someone tell a story that sounded more like a movie script than a real-life event? Every moment is flawlessly timed, every emotion placed with precision, and the plot unfolds so smoothly that it almost feels rehearsed. You're not just hearing about their experience, you're being performed to. And that's when your internal alarm should start ringing. Because when a story is too clean, too perfect, too cinematic, chances are it's not real. I learned this firsthand with someone I used to know. We'll call him Jake. Jake had a talent for storytelling, but not in the charming campfire way. No, Jake's stories were like blockbuster films. One time he recounted a business deal he closed, and the way he told it, you'd think it was the climax of a high-stakes espionage thriller. He described walking into a towering glass office, signing the contract at exactly 2:17 p.m., and then gazing out at the city skyline with a smirk while shaking hands with the CEO. All that was missing was the dramatic music and slow motion effects. At first, I bought into it, because honestly, we want to believe those stories. They're fun, they're dramatic, they make life feel bigger than it is. But as I started to pay attention, I noticed something off. The stories never changed, never evolved. They were too rehearsed, too clean, and when I asked follow-up questions, Jake would fumble. The seams started to show. Eventually, the truth came out. Half of it was exaggerated, and the rest completely made up. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Liars know we crave well-packaged stories. We like narratives that make sense, that entertain us, that follow a beginning, middle, and formula. So we ignore our instincts. We don't want to be rude or seem skeptical, so we let the red flags slide. That's exactly what they count on. Our desire for a neat version of reality over the messiness of the truth. But real life is messy. Truth isn't always symmetrical or dramatic. It's complicated, inconsistent, and filled with awkward pauses and loose ends. When someone presents you with a narrative that feels more like a screenplay than a memory, it's not just about impressing you. They're trying to control what you believe. They want to be the director, the writer, and the star. And you're just expected to clap. This is where it gets deep. A story that's too polished is rarely about connection. It's about manipulation. It's an attempt to control your perception, to earn your admiration without earning your trust. And when we reward that kind of storytelling without questioning it, we help keep the illusion alive. I learned to stop nodding along. I began to gently ask for context, to explore the parts that didn't quite add up. And sure enough, Jake's story started to unravel. The perfect timeline got fuzzy. The dramatic details contradicted earlier versions. The illusion cracked, and beneath it was the insecure reality he had tried so hard to mask. Here's the real message. Honesty doesn't have to be perfect. In fact, it shouldn't be. Real stories include mistakes, pauses, backtracking, and rawness. If someone isn't willing to show you that, they're not being honest. They're putting on a performance. So the next time you hear a story that's too slick, don't be afraid to gently probe. Ask questions. Look for inconsistencies. Not because you're trying to catch someone in a lie, but because you value truth over theater. Because true connection isn't about clapping at a perfect performance. It's about standing with someone through the imperfect truth. Number 5, when their body turns away, pay attention. Have you ever been in a conversation where someone is speaking directly to you, but their body is angled away, shoulders turned, feet pointed elsewhere, maybe even leaning back slightly like they're halfway out the door? On the surface, they seem present. Their words are saying, "I'm here, I'm listening." But their body is whispering something entirely different. "I don't want to be here." Most people overlook this. It seems subtle, maybe even accidental. But body language speaks louder than words, and when someone physically turns away from you, especially during a meaningful or vulnerable conversation, it's not just posture, it's a message. Let me share a story. I had a friend, someone I trusted and opened up to regularly. Over time, I started to notice something odd. Whenever our conversations veered into anything real, emotions, personal struggles, anything that scraped past the surface, his body would start to shift. First, it was a casual lean, then a turn of the torso, eventually full-on angling himself away. At first, I brushed it off. Maybe he was just fidgety. Maybe the chair wasn't comfortable. But it kept happening, always during the hard conversations. And eventually, the truth slipped out. He'd been hiding things. Not huge betrayals, but enough to damage trust. The clues were there long before the confession. His body had been telling me the truth his words were avoiding. Now here's the controversial truth. People lie, but their body rarely does. We've been conditioned to rely on words, to give people the benefit of the doubt when they say all the right things. But body language is instinctual. It reveals what the conscious mind is trying to hide. When someone's posture creates distance, when they literally turn away from you mid-conversation, it's often a sign they're emotionally or mentally withdrawing too. It's not just discomfort, it's avoidance. And here's the deeper insight. This isn't about paranoia, it's about presence. If someone truly respects you, if they value honesty and openness, they'll face you fully, even when the conversation is uncomfortable. Because turning your body towards someone is more than a physical gesture. It says, I'm here, I'm engaged, I'm not hiding. But when someone can't do that, when their body instinctively creates space between you, that's a crack in the connection. It might not always mean they're lying outright, but it almost always means something's being withheld. Too often we rationalize it. We tell ourselves it's no big deal, or we feel like we're reading too much into it. But let's be honest, our instincts are sharper than we give them credit for. If your gut says something's off, it probably is. That slight turn of the shoulder, that subtle repositioning away from you, it's not random. It's a defense mechanism, a way to dodge emotional exposure without saying a word. What I've learned is this: don't ignore the quiet signs. When someone turns away from you, they're not just adjusting their seat, they're protecting themselves from being fully seen. Maybe it's guilt, maybe it's shame, maybe it's fear, but whatever it is, it's worth noticing. And if you care about the relationship, whether it's a friend, a partner, or a colleague, it's worth asking, is there something you're not telling me? Because honesty doesn't come with a flinch. It doesn't turn its back when things get real, and neither should the people you trust. So next time someone's body angles away, don't just let it slide. That physical distance is often the first sign of emotional distance. Pay attention. Ask the uncomfortable question, because the truth doesn't hide, and it doesn't need to face away to feel safe. Number 6. Laughing off serious topics is not harmless. It's a warning sign. Have you ever tried to open up to someone, really open up, and instead of meeting you with presence or empathy, they just laugh? You bring up something serious, something that's been weighing on your heart, and their response is a smirk, a joke, a dismissive chuckle. It might seem harmless. They might even play it off as just trying to keep things light. But here's the truth. When someone consistently laughs off serious topics, they're not making things easier. They're avoiding them entirely. Let me give you a real-life example. I was once in a relationship where I genuinely tried, to have real conversations. I'd say things like, I've been feeling distant from you lately, or I think we need to talk about how we handle conflict. Every time I was met with the same reaction, a half laugh, followed by some variation of, you're overthinking it, or relax, it's not that deep. At first I let it go. I thought maybe I was just being too intense, too emotional. But over time I realized that laughter wasn't coming from lightness. It was coming from fear, from discomfort, from a deep resistance to being vulnerable or accountable. Here's the controversial truth. Humor can be a beautiful thing, but it can also be a mask. It can be used to hide pain, to dodge responsibility, and to silence hard conversations. We live in a world where being funny is praised, where wit is seen as charm and sarcasm is mistaken for intelligence. But when humor becomes a defense mechanism, it stops being endearing and starts becoming dangerous. Why? Because laughing off serious conversations doesn't just avoid a moment. It blocks emotional intimacy. It says, I'm not willing to go there with you. It pushes the conversation back onto you, as if you're the one who's taking things too seriously, when in reality, you're the only one being honest. And the worst part? Most people let it happen. No one wants to be the buzzkill who calls out a joke or presses into the tension. So we let it slide. We let people hide behind sarcasm and humor, all while important truths go unspoken. All while trust slowly erodes under the surface. But here's what I've learned. If someone can't sit with you in a serious moment, if they can't face the truth without using a joke to deflect, that says everything about their emotional capacity. They're not comfortable in the deep end. They want to keep things light, superficial, and easy. And real relationships, real connection, don't thrive in shallow water. Here's the deeper message. Emotional maturity means being able to hold space for discomfort. It means being willing to engage with what's hard, to talk about the things that aren't funny, the things that matter. When someone laughs off a serious conversation, it's often because they're not ready or not willing to confront something within themselves. So next time someone brushes off your serious words with a laugh, stop the moment. Look them in the eye and ask, "Why is that funny to you?" That one question alone can change everything. It forces them to step out from behind the joke and into the truth. Some will rise to the occasion, others will squirm. Either way, you'll get clarity. Because here's the bottom line. Honesty isn't always easy. It isn't always fun, but it's necessary. And if someone can't take the serious parts of life seriously, you have to ask yourself, how much trust can you really place in them? Laughter may lighten the moment, but it can't erase what's underneath. And if they refuse to drop the act, then you've got your answer. Number 7, vagueness when pressed for specifics, a silent alarm. Have you ever asked someone a direct question, and instead of getting a straight answer, they suddenly turn into a poet? Their words start flowing like smoke, pretty, elusive, and impossible to hold. You ask for dates, names, facts, and all you get back are sweeping statements, vague gestures, and phrases like, "It's complicated," or "We're in early talks." At first, you might brush it off, thinking they're just being casual or cautious. But pay attention. This isn't harmless. It's one of the biggest red flags there is. When someone gets vague under pressure, they're usually hiding something. Let me give you a real-world example. I had a coworker who loved talking about the big deals he was working on. You'd hear things like, "Yeah, I'm close to closing something major. It's going to change everything." Naturally, people got curious. We'd ask simple follow-up questions. "Who's the client?" Or, "How far along are you?" That's when the fog would roll in. He'd say things like, "Oh, we're just in early stages," or "Can't reveal too much, but it's huge." Always excited, always mysterious, and always without substance. Week after week, he'd repeat the same vague script. Eventually, someone looked into it. And guess what? There was no deal. In fact, there had never been any serious conversations. It was all smoke and mirrors. He'd been bluffing the whole time, hoping no one would dig too deep. And for a while, he got away with it, because no one wanted to be rude or push too hard. That's the trick. Vagueness works because we've been conditioned to give people the benefit of the doubt. We don't want to come off as demanding or distrustful, so we accept ambiguity and move on. But here's the truth most people won't say out loud. Vagueness is the liar's favorite weapon. It allows them to avoid accountability without telling a flat-out lie. It's like trying to catch fog in your hands. The more you try to hold it, the more it slips away. The truly honest people, they don't dance around answers. If you ask them a direct question, they'll give you a direct answer, even if it's uncomfortable, even if it doesn't make them look perfect. They're not afraid of being clear because they have nothing to protect, nothing to hide. But a person who thrives in vagueness, that's someone who's avoiding the truth, often because the truth doesn't serve them. Now let's be fair, we've all been vague at some point. Maybe we weren't prepared, maybe we felt pressured, maybe we didn't know how to respond. That's human. But the difference lies in intention. Someone who's honest will say, "I'm not sure," or "I need to check on that and get back to you." That's transparency. That's integrity. But when someone deliberately fills the space with fluff, generalities, or "you'll see" hype, that's manipulation. There's a deeper message here about integrity and trust. When someone refuses to give you specifics, they're not just being unclear. They're undermining the foundation of your relationship. Whether it's personal or professional, trust is built on clarity. If they're unwilling to give you that, they're signaling that your trust doesn't matter to them. Here's the part that gets uncomfortable. They're also betting on your good nature. They're relying on your politeness, your unwillingness to push, your fear of being too much. They think you'll let it slide, and often people do. We accept vague answers because pressing for clarity feels awkward. But awkwardness is the exact moment when truth hangs in the balance. It's in those moments when the answers get hazy that you need to lean in, not pull back. When someone starts using phrases like, "we'll see," "something's in motion," or "I can't say much right now," ask yourself, are they being cautious or are they avoiding the truth? It's a critical difference. And make no mistake, vagueness, when used deliberately, is a form of deception. It's a soft lie, a strategic smokescreen. And the more comfortable someone is using it, the more comfortable they are with manipulating the truth. That's why I've stopped letting people off the hook with non-answers. If I ask for clarity and get vague responses, I dig deeper. I don't do it to interrogate. I do it because I've learned that avoidance only leads to disappointment later. I've seen how small lies become big betrayals, all because no one wanted to ask, "Can you be more specific?" Not all lies come dressed as deception. Some come in the form of charming ambiguity, broad statements, and hopeful language. But clarity is a form of respect. And if someone can't give that to you, if they constantly blur the lines instead of drawing them clearly, they're not being honest, not with you, and maybe not even with themselves. Don't settle for fog. Ask for clarity, because you deserve to know exactly where you stand and who you're standing next to.